I guess I should call it.
It's time.
It is time. And with our packed agenda to get through. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to JMAP/Calext. We have what looked like it was going to be a packed agenda, but a bunch of people have been unable to prepare materials for it for various reasons. So it looks like it's going to be quite a short agenda. But anyway, if you want the slides, we're going to split this up so Jim does the slides and I do the note taking.
So hopefully by Thursday you've noted the note well. But if you by any chance haven't, you should really pay attention to the fine print here, having to do largely with intellectual property and a bunch of related things like that. And then there's the note really well, which deals largely with anti-harassment, guidelines for conduct, things like that. So we expect people to behave nicely. And you should probably be familiar with the meeting tips. Please do join the Meet Echo in order to get your attendance recorded. Since we aren't using blue sheets anymore.
We have double-digit people, so we're good. Our area director is going to allow us to continue. Isn't that how it works? You've got to reach at least double digits. There's no laws.
Double digits in what base?
Hey, everything's base 10.
Nah. We're actually double digits in hex now, so that's great.
Hey. All right. Shall we? Yeah. JMAP. Web Push Rapid was there with ISG. It's not. They published it earlier this week. Congratulations. It's done. We better implement it, I guess. Calendars is also sitting with ISG. Does anyone have anything they wanted to say on where that's at? It's with the editor in the edit queue at the moment. Sorry, it's gone. Someone's controlling it, and it's not me. I guess not. No one's popped in the queue. Work in progress, file node, that's me. I haven't done anything with it since the last IETF. I have spoken to a couple of people about it. I think probably the next thing to do is to look over what NFS does and see if there's anything weird in there. There are, there are more slides.
Since you're talking about file node, I thought.
Yeah. We need to implement it at Fastmail. We still have our own custom API. I think adding file node directly there would be easy enough. I'd love to have other implementations. We're not MailMain, but it's still good to have more than one implementation. And see what's missing that people actually use. I decided on what to add there by reviewing the WebDAV properties that all the WebDAV clients that use Fastmail have added, and seeing if there's anything in there that seemed necessary, and also looking at the fuse layer API, because that's what's often used for file systems, but there must be more things that people would want. Ken?
When you said this isn't MailMate, does that mean you think you're better or worse than MailMate?
Oh, yes. All right. You can pop up. We'll go heaps of time.
Yeah, I just need to sign in, sorry.
All right. Well, let's we can nip back to the previous slides that said some things while we're waiting for this. Where are we at? Yep. Next slide after this. was hello, Andy. He said he's not actually. He did sneak in the room. You snuck in afterwards. Welcome. Congratulations on picking the best working group. And yeah, Murray's still around somewhere. He's probably off enjoying some other group at the moment, but he'll be, yeah, I would too at this stage. So yes, welcome, Andy. All right, and the other slide that I had there was goodbye to Extra. Extra working group is now closed. We've shared our space with it quite a few times. Yay. And anything that you were going to take there, take to Mailmate, where it becomes Ken's problem, which is better or worse than it being my problem. All right, Hansi, I'll get you in yet.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I was already.
Oh.
So it's also file thing, right? And also, I've done one and read your.
Yeah, file thing.
Okay. So sorry. Okay, Hans-Jörg, Audriga. I think I told you already, Bronze, that we implemented some two or 3 years ago already something like a JMAP file thing based basically on re-engineering what the Fastmail thing was doing.
Yep.
So definitely we would align and provide something like a reference client implementation for that.
Yep.
Also, we do that not just with JMAP. So we used it actually in project already.
Yep.
But we also do that with connectors for like Dropbox and all that kind of stuff. So I'm also happy to review a little bit like what kind of stuff is in there.
That would be really
that
good.
might be helpful. So I'm super interested in that, definitely. So
Yep.
I will definitely provide some input and implementation, testing, whatever kind of stuff.
Awesome, appreciate it. I will grab you offline. All right, and I think that's pretty much all there is to say on files at the moment. My plan is to have a new draft published and at least some interoperability done by next IETF, by Madrid, and then hopefully we can take it from there. Cool. Next on our list are essential portability, REST, and tasks.
Sorry, can I say something?
Yeah,
so this is Ben Buch from Bionex. I'm interested in that as well. My use case is sharing, like the same thing that you do in Microsoft Teams or in other clients, that I have a document and I want to edit that together with other people. I want to share that with other people, maybe send a link to the document that I'm uploading to other people. So the collaborating with others on files for that is very interesting. I briefly talked very briefly with the formerly OwnCloud people about this, and the one sentence feedback that I got from them is that it's very limited and it doesn't have all the features that they need. So what I would propose, maybe if you're interested in feedback, to reach out to the former OwnCloud, now OpenCloud people, OpenCloud EU, and what they think would need to be in there. But things like create a link, for example, would be interesting for me. Public link or only for specific users, editable, writable, or also things like here's a directory and I want to download all the JSON files in that directory at once in a single request, preferably without zip and efficiently, something like that. But that's probably way beyond where you are right now.
Yeah, Fastmail provides something that does zip, but if we want to download all of them at once, we would need either some kind of a manifest file that the web browser knew how to turn into a bunch of H2 requests, or some other archive format.
Yeah, I specifically don't want to make multiple requests and I don't want to unpack. So what I was thinking about was something like multi-part MIME. And then I get a multi-part MIME back with all the many little files, something like this.
Okay. I mean, we could support all sorts of different things. I personally like tar, but that's because I wrote a Perl implementation of it. Cool. I'll do an updated draft. I will talk to Open Cloud, and who was the other people? Hans-Jörg's people. Sweet. All right. Essential portability, REST, and tasks are all.
Okay,
Yes.
I can probably just stand here for a while. But I have actually, I wrote in the chat, I have a small remark, I think, on the calendaring slide. So I came a little bit late for that, unfortunately.
Yep.
Sorry for that.
Just pop back up.
Because Mauro from Stalwart, he asked me to channel a concern he had on basically notifications. There was a discussion thread on the list in February.
Yep.
So he just asked me to say that this concern still stands. I didn't follow the whole thread, so I'm just relaying here what he said to me. He will probably also follow up on the list on that. I just had a very quick glance by myself, tried to understand it. And one thing that I found interesting, or maybe could be an interesting thing is, so I wondered, there's this calendar spam document, best practice document that was done by Morg and CarConnect in cooperation, which I found, even though there is a section on spam in the JMAP calendar document, doesn't seem to be cited or referred to, so that might be helpful. But that's just a short observation I had here.
All right. Neil, did you want to comment on that, or Robert? Is it Neil? Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying. I think I do remember that thread. I think my view was, I'm not sure Mario quite understood like how IMIP like integrates between the email and the calendar, like quite. I didn't see anything particularly that we should be changing the spec from that, but I can go back and look at the thread again. And obviously, it's been through a lot of review already. To get to the editor queue would be a big thing to pull it back from there.
I also couldn't comment much more on it. I mean, I just said I relayed, and yeah, that's fine.
All right, thank you. I've noted that in the actions list for Neil. On the essential portability, REST, and tasks topic. Up. Ben, go ahead.
Hi. Yes, I followed the thread with Mauro as well from Stalwart, and I 100% agree with Mauro on this, including exactly all those reasons that he's listed in his original email. I think those reasons were very sound and were not really considered properly. The basic conclusion that I came to is that invitations is an object on its own. Currently, it's being treated as an event on my calendar, but it's not. It's an invitation. It's not an event on my calendar yet. It's something that somebody proposes, and I have to actively react to that. And before I didn't react to that, it is not on my calendar, and I will not use any calendar that other people can write to, because this is my sovereignty here, where I manage my time, and I don't let other people manage my time, including my colleagues. So this is something very fundamentally important. And the concept that is the answer, yeah, okay, it's an event in my calendar and I can confirm or whatever. No, I don't want it at all in my calendar. It has to be a separate list. So I have an email, I have the list of invitations, and I have the calendar events, and they're all three separate things. So I think that's how it has to be modeled, and there needs to be more thinking going into that.
So the email is the invitation. If you don't want to automatically add it to your calendar, then you can, well, in some providers at least, tell it not to. And then when you open the email, decide whether to go, yes, click one click, add to my calendar, or no. Otherwise, like, an invitation does exist in the calendar. That's how it works with CalDAV and iCalendar and all existing systems which we need to be compatible with. Like we could look at some extension for something different on top, but I don't think there's, yeah, that's just how it works.
Yeah, I wanted to say pretty much the same thing that Neil said. In terms of expertise in that area, we're moving into more the CalExt people here, and I think Ken's probably got the longest experience dealing with this stuff, having implemented it from scratch in a server. My understanding of it is that if you aren't using email and it comes in via iSchedule, the event gets added to a separate calendar queue, the inbox, which is not necessarily your actual calendar, but it's still it's a calendar event on a calendar. You can just have a calendar which is invites I have not yet processed, which doesn't necessarily need to appear and hush your chill, but you will need to deal with it at some point. And if it's not coming via email channel, it has to go somewhere, and it may as well be the same type of object, not a completely separate type of object.
Sometimes it even does that when it comes in via email. I was going to say sometimes it does that even when it comes in via email, at least in my experience.
Anyway, I think this still applies with the Neil to go back, look at that thread and see what needs to be replied to clarify it. Which brings us again to essential portability, REST, and tasks. At some point, we'll get to these. Hans-Jörg, did you have things to say here?
Yeah. So yeah, I think I told some of you already. So Joris, who is one of the main authors of it, he won't probably have too much time in the future to continue working on those. So maybe on some, but not on all of them. Which certainly will slow down progress a little bit. So I think there is like two consequences from this somehow. I think in general, most of them are somehow describing stuff we were doing already. Yeah. So and we are happy to write this further and so on. I think it would be great if for some of those drafts there might be also additional people interested in joining editing them. I think some of them are not too far from being in a shape that makes them worth publishing. I will certainly also, as also one of the authors in most of them, continue working on them, but maybe more in a linear fashion. Yeah? So unfortunately, therefore there is no big stuff to present this meeting on that. Probably I'll try to manage for the next upcoming meeting in Madrid to probably pick one of them to bring it a little bit forward, and then maybe we can go on them one by one or so, or depending basically also on interest by other people.
Yeah, which is probably whether we call for interest here or on the list might be good on the list to ask whether anyone is keen to be a co-author on any of those documents.
So what I would probably suggest that in the 2 weeks following the IETF, I will probably for each of them, write a short mail what it's about, because some of them have also a little bit of arcane titles, so everybody knows what they are about and which states they are in, and maybe then people can jump in.
Cool, thank you. All right. SMIME sender extensions is with Alexi, and he's not here, so I guess that one's still dead. We've had this one sitting around for quite a few years at this stage, and it hasn't made any progress. So I guess I'll have to ask Alexi whether he thinks it's going anywhere or not.
Maybe one small addition, since I see there's also the archive format mentioned on the slide. I'm not sure if you touched that earlier. Yeah. Just a short information for the people in the room. I think I also wrote it on the working group mailing list. So fortunately, in that case, Alexei and Lisa jumped in to also work on this draft. And in the discussion, we found out that probably it might not be completely in the charter of the JMAP working group, where I initially presented it, I think, in San Francisco. Which is why we brought it now to the mainland group today and actually just presented about it in the session before. So just in case people were wondering, but I guess most of the people I see here anyway were there. But
yeah, thank you.
For foul reasons.
All right, Ken.
Yeah, two things.
Yeah, chip that thing up. Well,
Yeah, so the archive format has already gone out, call for adoption in MailMate. And I would suggest that the SMIME sender extensions, maybe just park that draft and we can always revisit it down the road.
Neil.
While we're on proposed stuff, last meeting, I presented the proposal for the new JMAP email delivery push notification, and the minutes say that Bron was going to call for adoption on the mailing list, which I do not believe happened, and it has been forgotten. I'll be honest, I've not done any more work on it since then, but it is still very much something I think we want and should continue with.
All right, I will put an action for a call for adoption, which for sure means it will be. If I put it in linear, then it'll definitely happen. If I put it in here, I'll just go translate it straight after the meeting. All right. Yeah, I'll talk to Alexia about parking SMIME sender extensions. Any other business? Guess not. Then let's see, can you unslide? And I think I should be able to share. I just looked at the drop down and extra is not listed there anymore. I've only got 2 working groups in my documents list. Isn't that awesome? Hey. I think I can do that. Hey, sweet. All right. So our milestones, we have submit web push Vapid. That's clearly done. Submit portability guide to IASG. Was clearly not done. Do you have any idea which ones you're going to want to do first, Hans-Jörg?
Not yet.
Not yet? All right. Well, I'm just going to kick them all out to July then. That's done. We adopted it. Adopt a draft for push filtering. That's going to happen in April. SMIME sender extensions document is going to be parked. Kick it to the end of the year. JMAP archive format, we're going to say is not going to happen here because it's been shifted to another working group. REST mapping document, we're kicking forwards to July. Portability extensions. I'm just going to kick everything to July and then we'll reprocess it. It's already July. Sweet. Do we have any new items we've come up with in all of this? Don't think so. Because the push extension is already there. Archive format's been ditched. The rest is all happening. Sweet. All right. Then I'm going to save these changes. And I think it'll just let me because I haven't added anything. Yep, it didn't demand area director help. Sweet. All right, let's pop back to the slides and do Calext. Thanks everyone for a nice quick JMAP session. We got it done in 24 minutes. Sweet. All right, so this is our agenda so far. We have tasks and subscription upgrade are both ticking along just there in case anyone had anything to say on it. We have the active work, the JS Calendar, iCalendar, which we have slides for, and I think we have slides for one of the other things here as well. iCalendar series has expired, so I just wanted to check in with Mike where that's at, but I think he was unable to join us today as well. We had some notes about participants in VPOL, which I'll get Ken to speak about when we get there. So any agenda bash before we move on?
Robert Stepanek, Fastmail. I have an individual draft for JS contact profiles that I would like to present today and ask for adoption.
Cool.
And Neil and Hans-Jörg are in the queue. Okay, yeah, I wasn't paying attention to see if I should have dropped you out. Thank you.
Cool. All right, shall we move on to have a quick look at tasks and subscription upgrade? Is there anything in there that people want to talk about?
Any slides for those?
No. So tasks is at AD evaluation. Sorry, subscription upgrades at AD evaluation, and tasks is waiting for AD go ahead. That's what I was about to ask.
The AD is squinting in his screen. History. Cache refresh.
Hi, Ori Steele, responsible AD. I guess for tasks, the history shows Iona not okay. We've completed last call. So I guess my question for the chairs is, do we know why Iona's not okay?
Ken, you're the shepherd for this one. It says version change review needed in my.
Yeah, I'm looking. I think I did an expert review on this and it looked okay. I don't recall if or why it went back to Mike. Or he can probably find the history better than I can.
No, I think it's possible. It's possible that just when the new version was published, it automatically reset Iona.
Yeah.
I can check with them, but
Yeah,
know,
thanks.
it's on me.
All right, I will put action orator. And what about subscription upgrade?
So looks like we have a new version in March. AD evaluation's already done. It's in follow-up. It's probably a case of I need to push the buttons and move it along and make sure that comments were addressed, and that's also on me.
Cool.
One other note, authors, chairs, always feel free to ping me to remind me if I'm holding a document. I don't mind reminders at all personally.
Cool.
So, you're welcome to reach out anytime. And it looks like I've got actions on both these documents. So here at the mic, if I haven't responded to them or moved them along in some period of time, send me an email. Thanks.
Cool. Easy. All right. Next, I think, is the JS Calendar, iCalendar. So, Robert, we have slides for you, I believe.
Yes.
Do you want the clicker?
Oh, yes, please.
There's 3 whole slides, so it's
Yeah.
a lot of clicking.
It's gonna be
Yep.
easy.
Do you need to share to the slides clicker the permissions?
Oh, do I?
Sure.
I would just tell you when to switch sides. It's
Yep.
just
3 slides anyway. I won't use the clicker.
It's done.
Okay, good. Perfect, thank you. Hello. JS Calendar, iCalendar is, as a reminder, about converting between the JS Calendar format and the iCalendar format. What we did since last IETF is, so at last IETF, I had proposed to make this an experiment. The consensus within the working group was that we should rather go for standard. So I changed the intended status back to standard, which basically will mean that apart from our implementation, we will need at least one more implementation to make this a real standard document. I also removed the draft version that I had presented last time in Dublin, contained a couple of properties for JS Calendar that were kind of missing for some elements of iCalendar. I deliberately removed all of them from the current document, except the ones that are specific to preserving elements from iCalendar and JS Calendar and the other way around, because it started to become inconsistent on which property should have like a new standard element in JS Calendar or iCalendar or the other way around, and not define new elements for all of them. And defining all of them would be very much out of scope of this document. So I think we should rather introduce new extension documents for all the stuff that the current IANA registered elements for JS Calendar or iCalendar are not sufficient. I replaced all the to be defines that were in the document still in last time. So in that regard, I consider the current definition of conversion rules complete. And that means that, and by complete, I mean either the document defines how to convert an element from JS Calendar to iCalendar or the other way around, or it explicitly lists this element as inconvertible. And this list of inconvertible elements in the appendix is, in my opinion, would be a very good discussion to have on what of those should get convertible and what do we need to make it happen, meaning that what extensions do we need to define in separate documents than this one. The next steps for this is I'm going to finish our implementation. I'm not going to give a timeline, but it's going to be soon. Since every conversion example in the document is machine readable to generate an actual conversion test. Our implementation will also be useful to find any bugs that are currently in the examples. There were only a few, but there still might be more for the stuff we haven't implemented yet. The next step for us then will be to do some real-world testing with our JMAP for calendars implementation, but also with serving that data over CalDev to our users at Fastmail, and also using it in IMAP for scheduling. Should we come across any elements during these real-world tests that we are missing as standard elements, then of course we will need to come up with extension documents to make this more stable. I think the biggest unknown is waiting for the second implementation. I see that Michael Douglas is today not participating, so I don't know what's the status on his implementation. I see that Hans-Jörg is in the queue, so maybe he would want to comment on that. And this is the end of my presentation.
All right, this is Hans-Jörg. So I don't know about Mike's implementation, but we have one actually, which might not be on the very latest version of the draft, so we might need to look into it, but I just sent a link in the chat as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you much. I'll have a look, and that's great to hear. All right, that's the end of the JS Calendar iCalendar presentation.
Cool. Thanks. So the next steps here are implementation experience.
Yes, implementation and interoperation testing.
Cool. Any other questions, comments before we move on? All right, next we have ITIP using participant only, which is a new draft that came up just before, I think, last IETF or just after, from Mike. Without Mike here, does anyone else have anything to say on that one? Ken's like, no. Neil, did you have anything on this?
Sorry, which draft?
ITIP participants.
I don't have anything on that. No, that's been all Mike.
Yeah.
I think at the very least, it's going to need some interrupt testing to see if it's even going to be feasible to start using this.
All right. I guess we'll just leave that for the next one. Next up is VPOL, if you wanted to stay up there again.
My recollection from what Mike told me is that he has rewritten his implementation to use participants, and it is functional. I believe I have updated libical to the current spec, so all the various pieces are there. I don't recall where our implementation in Cyrus is at this point. I have to take a look. But at some point, Mike and I need to send some messages back and forth and make sure that we can round trip this stuff. So I will try to do that before Madrid, but I can't make any promises. All depends on what my bosses at Fastmail have me doing otherwise.
Yeah. So you'll be driven like a slave the whole time. No breaks. All right. iCalendar series was shelved, so without Mike here to speak about it, I think that one's also going to remain shelved for now, which leads us to the other business. Robert, I think we have a draft for that. Have slides for this as well. Yeah.
All right. So this is a proposal for new work in this working group called JS Contact Profiles. What do I mean by that? So what I propose is that so far within the Calyx working group and also in the JMAP working group, we've been talking about JS Contact primarily in context of address book applications, and in that context to replace or represent differently existing vCard data. But since JS Contact got published, I got feedback from a couple of different people in other working groups that are also interested in using JS Contact. And the vibe that I got is that that some of JS Contact is perceived as unnecessary for them in their use cases. And in order to encourage still using JS Contact and also to make it easier for implementers of only these other protocol specific uses of JS Contact, I would like to propose a way how protocol designers or other working group or other RFC authors can define how they use JS Contact by defining a named subset of JS Contact elements, which makes implementation easier and more narrowly scopes down the semantics of context data that is required for their use cases. The people I heard of so far is that in the Regis working group, there is the idea of using JS context in terms of RDAP. There is a draft for that already, and that's written by Mario Lofredo, the co-author also of JS Contact, and he's interested in JS Contact profiles for that. There's also a currently individual draft written by Philip Helen Baker, making use of cryptographic keys in JS Contact. I think he will split this work in several working groups, but also for this effort, a JS Contact profile might be helpful or not. That's something we need to look into more. And also the RPP working group is showing interest in JS Contact, and in that regard also is showing interest in only using a subset of JS Contact elements. So what do I mean by a JS Contact profile? A JS Contact profile is something that has a unique profile name that defines a strict subset of JS Contact elements and types and is registered at IANA. I find this last point very important. I would like the JS Contact, I would like to establish a JS Contact profiles registry, which is maintained like all the other JS Contact registries, so that implementers of general purpose JS Contact libraries can pull all these profile definitions from a single source of truth, rather than having the library implementers go through a bunch of most likely differently worded RFC documents from different working groups, what elements they support in JS Contact or not. Yeah, I think I actually said everything that's on the slide. Let me just check. Yeah, so it should be useful to protocol designers as a standardized way to communicate what elements they deem useful for their use case, but also for implementers to implement that then. A JS Contact may, as a subset of JS Contact elements, restrict for a given object type that is optional, or for a given object type define which of the optional properties are allowed to be set. So they can then narrow down the properties in a JS Contact object. They can make optional properties mandatory. They can restrict the enum values allowed for a certain property, and they can reduce the polymorph type definition of a property. So if in the current definition you can either have object type A or B as a value, you can say only A is allowed. What they must not do is they cannot make any mandatory property optional. They cannot completely replace or expand a type signature. They cannot change default types of a property. They cannot reduce the allowed values of non-enum values. Like if the JS Contact spec says this integer value can be in the range of 0 to 100, a JS Contact profile cannot say it must be in the range of 5 to whatever. What of course RFC authors always can do, they can register in their in context of their document, they can always register new elements in the JS Contact registry at IANA, and then they can refer to these properties in their standards. But it should be that there is only one complete model of JS Contact data, and not for each profile having at worst the same named properties having different value types or whatnot. So this is just an example for how that IANA registry could look for a very simple profile. This would be the profile of a JS Contact card that only allows you to store emails that are optional in a contact card. It restricts that you can only use contact cards for individuals in this use case, since the kind property could be individual, group, and I think device and something else in the overall JS Contact model. This would be only the subset of individual contact cards that are allowed. It would make the optional name property mandatory, but since it also restricts the properties in that name object type, it basically means that the contact card must have a name, but you can only set the full name. You cannot set individual name components. What the small text just says that the properties of a UID and version and the type properties, so stuff that's like the metadata you always need to support even in a profile. Yeah, and the next step is to ask for adoption in the Calyx working group. I think this, I expect Calyx JS contact profiles to evolve in context of staying in contact with the working groups that actually are likely to make use of it. Let's see what shakes out of this. Yeah, I think this might be quite some time in the running, and see and come up with something that's useful for people, or at the end it could turn out we don't need it. But I think both are fine outcomes. But we should, I think there is value in defining a structure early, and see if it's useful to people, and refine that. That's the end of my presentation.
Thanks, Robert. We've got that's right. We've got a queue, so Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Ken. Yeah, I'm in favor of adopting this. I think it's worthwhile to provide other groups or parties a framework from within they can work to create their own profiles rather than have everybody do it their own way.
Yes, thank you. That's the exact intention of this.
This is Hans-Jörg. First of all, great to see actually there is so much interest, and from also very diverse backgrounds. I think that's really cool. And in the same way, I think this kind of an idea of the profiles also makes a lot of sense, to even probably make it more usable also in even more cases. I have two questions. So one question is, I also like the idea with the IANA registry. Question is, do you plan on formalizing the description of this optional and property stuff in a way so that, for instance, library implementers could automatically integrate that in some way, or didn't you think so far yet?
Yes, so this table I've been showing would actually would be my idea of like the headers in the table would be really the elements in the registry. And so you would like, if you want to make an optional property mandatory, you would define the property name, the property context, meaning the object in which this property is defined, and then set mandatory. And this should be very easy to process when you download the IANA registry as a CSV file, for example.
Okay, yeah, okay. I didn't think about that. I thought if there would be some XML or JSON file with that, I don't know. Maybe the CSV could be fine. I need to see it. Probably.
As far as I know, you can download all IANA registries for sure in CSV format. Maybe they also support XML export. I'm not sure. Okay. But in either way, I would just go with what IANA currently supports. I think it's good enough. And I would rather not use some more sophisticated schema like JSON schema or whatnot. People should just be able to use IANA registries as the source of truth in their implementations.
Okay. The other question would be in terms of properties which are not yet defined in core JS contact, like something like extensible properties. Did you think about that as well, or is that in scope?
Yes. Well, I did think so far. I did insofar think of it as if you define a profile. Let's stick with this simple profile example. This would be frozen to only support these properties unless the profile gets updated. So if there are any extensions defined later for JS Contact, any card that has these other properties does not conform to that profile. Maybe let me clarify more what I mean to conform. In context of this draft, we would only say a card conforms to a profile if it consists only of the elements explicitly stated in that profile. We do not say it's invalid, because that's really, if it does not conform, we do not say it's invalid, because it's up to the protocol designers to decide what to do with data that does not conform to that profile. We also do not encode the profile name in the card, because by the way JS contact is defined, we cannot expect all implementations to even implement profiles, so they might inadvertently pass around JS contact data and change it, which does it not make conform to that profile anymore. Yeah, so, but coming back to your question, a profile would be frozen at a single point in time of what elements it supports that were defined for JS contact at that time.
Okay, cool. Final meta question, maybe I missed something, but I'm a little bit confused. You propose it in Calyx for adoption. Wouldn't that be better suited in JMAP working group?
I mean,
I mean, what is the relation to Calyx, actually? I was wondering.
it's just,
This is probably a chair question.
Yeah.
So the charter for Calyx is it is the maintenance group for the contacts and calendar formats in both JSON and
Okay, so,
the crappy old formats. So yeah, this is definitely in scope for Calyx specifically.
Hi, Andy Newton. I'm taking off my hat because this is not an AD thing. I'm one of those people that attempted to implement JS Contact in RDAP, and I immediately walked away from it. And then probably the reason why that draft is not going anywhere in regex at the moment. So RDAP does need a profile. I don't know. So I think you answered one of my questions, which is once you've set the profile, none of these things change, which I don't believe the current RDAP draft or regex draft does that. So I think that's good. I think that's needed. In your table here, is the profile name next to the elements that are being, how's this work?
So this table in completeness would be assigned one unique profile name. So the profile would consist of the list of elements that it supports.
Okay, so you go to the IANA registry and you'd say, oh, this is the profile, and you download it, and then you get this table.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Is there a reason why you need to download the table? Is that from that I got like it has to be machine parsable for some reason. Why is that?
It doesn't have to be machine readable.
Is that one of your intents? That's what I'm getting at.
We took great effort when we defined the JS contact IANA registry to make it that you can come up with a, let's say, 80% validator by only generating your validation code from the registry. It's not 100%, but I think it's good enough, and I think it's worthwhile. At least the way I'm using JS contact in our code, it would be great to have not implement this down by just reading the spec, but also by being able to generate some of the code directly from the IANA registry.
Okay, so specification conformance is what you were after there, right?
Yes.
Okay, okay, that makes sense now. So I would be all for this, especially if you could, one of the things you could say that the profile doesn't have to support is the patch objects, because that was the biggest thing I had a problem with. So.
Yeah, but we can think about that. Yeah.
So what was the bit that you wanted to not have to support?
Patch objects. Yeah. So for simple RDAP clients, having to do patch objects things, it's just, that's far more complication than anyone's going to do. So, so just for everyone's understanding, a lot of RDAP clients are extremely simple. And right now we use JCard. So for us to switch over to JS Contact, which would be good, that would be a step up. But one of the things is that when you get a JS Contact, and you have to start doing all this JSON map. What is it? JSON whatever.
JSON pointer stuff.
Pointer. That's it.
Yeah.
And then you're having to constitute multiple objects. At that point, no one's going to do that.
Yeah.
I think this could
cool.
be a simple Boolean flag on that profile if it allows patch objects. And practically speaking, at the moment, patch objects, if I recall correctly, only are used for localizations. So it would basically, in practice, it would mean that in the localizations, one might still use the localization object if that's used for that profile, but one would need to replicate the complete card, the complete localized card in that object. I think is what you might want to get at, if I understood. Okay.
All right, cool. Pete, I think, is next in the queue.
Hans-Jörg is next.
Because
Pete's going.
Will will probably say something useful.
All right. Hans-Jörg, go for it.
Just what Andy said made me think a little bit about there might be a relation between these. I think it's the JMAP essential profile document, because actually that's coming from a little bit a similar direction here. You know, we made that kind of thing because we had more from a protocol perspective in our migration use case, a problem that JMAP defined, the JMAP protocol defined a lot of methods like also patch, delete, whatever kind of stuff. Which we wouldn't want to implement would need to implement for our case. So in a way, this is sort of orthogonal here. So we might think about, at least we should consider each other in a way. Maybe one could even think that a little bit further, because I think the aim of both approaches is in a way to help other communities that probably don't have in mind to write a fully fledged JMAP server to make use of JMAP data structures, JMAP functionality, right?
Yeah, I was also thinking about the work you were doing in that regard.
It's actually a good lead into my meta comment or meta question, and I'll note that the AD should probably be aware of this. Apparently, my name is still on the ancient charter as the chair of vCard. I didn't even remember I was chair of vCard at some point. And I got an email from some W3C folks who are working on their RDF format for vCard. And I said, I'm not sure why you've CC'd me on this thread, but you know, there's this stuff going on with, there is JCard and now there's JS Contact, and maybe you want to look at that stuff. And they said, ooh, that looks really interesting. And maybe we want to have some interaction. And I'd like this particular ball out of my court. So I don't know if this requires some sort of formal liaison discussion or me forwarding you this email and you guys can take it, or Ori wants the email, but it sounds like something you should deal with and I shouldn't.
Hi, Ori Steele. Yeah, I'm happy to take your email. Did you already like direct them to the mailing list for Cox?
I did.
Okay, so.
Or I put the drafts.
Okay. They shown up on the lists at all? Asked any questions yet?
Don't believe so.
Okay. Well, you know, if you want to connect me directly to them, I'm happy to take that ball.
Sweet. Thank you.
And that way you guys will know when it's coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Daniel volunteers to deal with everything because he's asleep. All right. Sweet. I'm going to issue a call for adoption for this document straight after this. And thanks.
Good.
I think that was all our business. Does anyone have any other business? Hans-Jörg had a thing. You have another thing too? All right. Let's let Hans-Jörg go first because you've just had a turn.
So sorry, that's my last time for the thing. So very quick question. So something that actually came up in discussion with Lisa and Alexei in that archive format thing was actually stuff like, folks of you might know, there is IMAP special folders. Like, you know, in historic IMAP, an email client didn't have any idea about what is an inbox, what is a deleted, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was RFC, I don't know the number, that was improving that by a lot, and actually a super useful thing, and there's quite some adoption about that right now. So in the archive format situation, we have some problem now also with when we talk about archiving and, you know, making these archives probably portable to other vendors. Obviously, the special use kind of thing is matters.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as I know, there is not such thing for instance, calendars, contacts, and files. So next question you might ask, are there special folders at all? There are. So we see that sometimes For instance, a pattern you very often see is like something like work and personal default folders in many calendaring systems, where you even cannot influence the name. So the name is UI given. And so if you would make that portable, you just get a UID or something like that. Also in the destination systems, the name might be different. So even if you would have that personal work thing, you might not just want to take that because the actual string attached to it in the destination system might just be different, la da la da la da. You might have also deleted kind of stuff like that. So the question is basically, did I overlook something? So is there something like that? Was there something discussed in the past? Is this something people are interested in? I remember we had a similar discussion and we brought that in the folder roles thing in JMAP. So I think in JMAP it is possible. So the question would be, would it make sense to do that for CardDAV, CalDAV, to define that as some, properties in the thing? And how would that work if we would do the same thing also for WebDAV, for instance? Yeah. Would that be in scope?
Do we have anyone in the room who wrote the original dev drafts? It seems like the kind of thing that you would want to define a property name for that could be set. So live property on the dev collections, and then you'd set that property.
I mean, one of the questions also, is it worth it in a way, right? Because will, legacy kind of things anyway adopt it? I mean, you could do hacks in the portability thing when you know the vendor from to export it or something like that. Or you could define something in the portability format, which doesn't necessarily needs to be in the protocol. But the question is, wouldn't it be also useful to have it on the CardDAV protocol, since also it's still used, right, by a lot of vendors and so on. Yeah, so I can also put it to the list anyway, but I wanted to take the chance.
There's two people in the queue who have comments to make, so Robert.
To be clear, I don't have a comment to make on what Hans-Jörg said.
Oh, okay. Ken. Okay.
So, I've got a question for Hans-Jörg. So, in terms of CalDAV, which special folders are you talking about other than scheduling, inbox, outbox, and default calendar? Because those are the only three that I'm aware of.
So I mentioned already, like a private work is the thing we see quite often, for instance. For WebDAV, you might have photos, pictures, these kind of things, videos.
Yeah, it sounds just write a spec and define what those properties are.
Yeah, I don't say it's rocket science. I just ask if it's worth it or what people think about it.
Yeah, I'm assuming additions to any of the DAV protocols probably is out of scope for this group.
We own CalDAV, CardDAV still.
We own the protocols. We own the formats.
Yeah, we own the protocols for CalDAV and CardDAV as well.
Fair enough.
Pretty sure. Let me check it's been years. Let me check what it actually says in our actual charter. It says CalDAV, iCalendar, iTip, IMIP, vCard, CardDAV, JS Calendar, JS Contact, and many existing extensions, etc. for them.
So what, not WebDAV then, right?
It's not explicitly listed, but it says, and the many existing extensions and companion documents to those. I think you could make a case.
So he just said he can change it. So
unless NFS wants it, I think you could make a case that WebDAV is more closely scoped to this working group than anywhere else in the IETF that's currently operating. So yeah, probably, particularly if we're using the same property in CalDAV, CardDAV, and WebDAV, then it would make sense to define it in one place. All right. Did I hear any promises in that? Any offers of work? Anyone else have anything to? I'm just heckling that. Yeah, Robert.
I actually also have a comment on the about page of the working group. One comment is that it suggests the JS contact still is a draft, and I think that's just because it refers to the JMAP working groups version that got replaced by the Calyx working group version, and that's both at the top of the working group description and also in the done milestones.
Yep.
My other comment is more general. Should we rename the working group to calendar and contacts extensions? Because we've been producing quite some contacts work in the last couple of years too.
So
Maybe
I
that
think
also goes
last
to the
time
question
we
that-
recharted, yeah, we probably should rename the headline
Yeah,
for
that's
it.
what I mean.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so the text that you're referring to is the top of your charter text. So as much as it hurts me to say this, like to change that, we have to change the charter.
Yeah, ouch.
Which, by the way, I'm totally happy to help you do, but I think that's more for the working group and chairs to discuss, like when you want to make those kinds of updates.
Yeah.
You know, with my AD hat on, I'd suggest maybe gather up a bunch of cleanup things that you want to do,
Yeah.
and then maybe consider that. But that's for you as chairs
Yeah.
and working group to decide, and I'm here to support when you feel like you are sure you want to do something.
Does that title at the top, the calendar extensions, Calyx abbreviation, is that also?
That's the group name.
Yep.
That's, yeah. I mean, that I'm less sure about than the charter piece actually.
Yeah.
But I think I'd rather take that one offline.
All right. So the action here is Bron to work with Ori about making it all look nice. Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully we can make that a bit nicer. Ben.
While we're at the topic of scope and off topic, what would be the right working group and the right approach if I wanted to standardize the way of sending links? Like, let's say I have a web dev server and I want to take one document from that and share a link for this, writable, readable, or a folder, and I want to have an API for that, because from what I'm understanding, most of these are currently software-specific APIs, like OwnCloud has its own, Nextcloud has its own. And to have a standard for this kind of stuff, what would be the right approach, working group, whatever, for that?
Shooting from the hip on this one, I would say that the act of generating one of those things is probably service specific. And in this working group, we could define a method that says, for this resource, give me a link. For resources that we control the specification for accessing. As for the format of the link itself, that's probably completely outside the scope of anything. That would be very service specific. And then as for how you transmit those links, if you're transmitting them within these protocols, you just define a field that's where they're transmitted. If you're transmitting them to other systems, then it would be format specific to how you're transferring them. So
yeah, I'm not talking about the format. I'm talking about the format of the URL. Know how to transmit it, just to create the URL with the properties. So basically, I have a generic web dev server, and I want to have this document. I want to have a URL for that.
Yeah, I think pretty much. I mean, there's two questions here, right? Are you talking about a way to programmatically generate it offline, or are you talking about having the server create you one? Because if the server's creating you one, then it's just an API call, and the server gives you back a URL. If you wanted something structured so that you could say, given a path to a file, can I generate a URL that will work to access that offline without the server's involvement in creating it, then that's much trickier. And I don't know where that would go. Maybe HTTP API, but
Yeah, it's more like I have access to those files, but others don't because I have to log in to access them, of course.
Yeah.
And I just need a public sharing link that I can hand to other people and saying, okay, these people can read this document or this folder, or they can write to it. And I just need the server to generate me that URL with the encoded permission in there.
Yeah. I mean, in that case, generally, you just specify a protocol, like as part of the protocol. So if we wanted to have a JMAP extension for it, you'd create a JMAP extension that gives you a property you can fetch or an API call you can make that either way generates the URL of that format.
Yeah, so the protocol I was thinking about was WebDAV specifically, because that's a low least common denominator for all of these.
I think that'd be something you could propose as a WebDAV extension here, and as a way to fetch some kind of property that the server created, I imagine. But Ken?
Yeah, so my guess would be you just define the WebDAV property. The client uses a prop find to get it, and if the property is defined such that it's going to come with a single-use token or whatever it's going to be, it's going to generate it's going to put that token in the URL and say, here's what you got to use. And the user's just going to use a GET to fetch that. It's just regular HTTP and DAV at that point.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, capabilities. Somebody said the word. It's a capability URL is probably the term of art that will help us name this thing and all understand it quickly. It doesn't seem suited to a WebDAV property to me, because a WebDAV property implies a certain amount of persistence, and you don't want capability URLs to be necessarily, you might want several of them, not just one. So the property just doesn't seem like a good fit in a number of ways. And I also don't see any reason at all why this would be limited to WebDAV. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with collections or another WebDAV specific feature that I can think of. Is there something specific to WebDAV that goes along with this? Why wouldn't you have a way of asking HTTP servers for capability URLs, which has a lot of security considerations, but probably the utility would overweigh if we could get people past the threat model and stuff.
Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, I guess my immediate thought, just to jump in on this, would be that WebDAV is the way that people currently have of referencing the object. So if you have access to a WebDAV server and it has some files on it, you want to share one of these, the way that you can reference the object is to say this path on the WebDAV server. That's the file that I would like to share.
Same thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So here's Hans-Jörg, your data portability enthusiast. So actually, beyond what you were discussing, I think there's even an important portability aspect in this, because I'm not kidding. It's true, yeah. Because this is an actual challenge we do have when migrating online storage, because this is one of the things you cannot easily port, right? So that's my pitch here to say, if one thinks about that, that should probably be a consideration, which is not easy in that case, but it's actually a blocker for people to actually switch providers, because it's a reference and not the actual data which is transferred here, and this is very specifically bound right now and non-standardized by the actual vendors.
Okay, since WebDAV resources are just HTTP resources, if you have an URL, you have the handle to the item, and you might as well treat it as an HTTP item. However, the use cases might well involve special treatment for WebDAV collections. And now you are talking something WebDAV specific, but I would love to see this sounds like really useful work. I can't believe it hasn't been, I can't remember it being seriously discussed in 15 years, maybe 20. And that seems weird to me with how obviously useful it could be. Not seriously disgusted, seriously discussed.
Hey.
Very distracting seeing your words translated.
Seriously disguised.
Yeah. Seriously distracted. Yeah, what was I even saying? I think we should take this offline at this point, but I'd be happy to be involved.
Great. Thanks a lot for everybody.
I'm very happy for this to be discussed on the Calix mailing list if we don't have a better home for it. So offline can be online on that list. Yeah, Ken.
I was going to suggest that this probably goes to HTTP BIS, since that's where all the experts are in this kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
like Lisa, I'm actually surprised it hasn't been done before, and maybe we're just not aware of it.
Yep.
Or HTTP API.
All right.
Either one of the groups is going to have MNOT and that whole crew. So
Yep. So Ben, I guess we should chat with them as well next time, or pop over to their list and say, is there any work in this space? We're talking about it here. Lisa.
W3C published good practices for capability URLs. So that's probably a good place to start and see if they did anything more or had plans that were nascent.
Sweet. All right. So I think might be worth trying to iron it out a bit more on the Calix mailing list first, and then go over to HTTP API and ask them if they have anything like that. And Ascot pointed out in the chat, this is also somewhat related to the stuff I want to do with large file attachments in email, and having a standard way of generating a link back to the source server for the attachment and saying, go fetch this gigabytes of video from here, and then store it locally by reference so that you don't lose it when the source server goes away, because that is the problem with large emails. And the current way links are generated is that they, particularly the Apple one, I think disappears after 28 days, and others have indeterminate lifespan. And so if you don't read the email and download the copy and maintain it yourself, then it gets unlinked from that email at some point. All right.
Yeah, that was exactly one of the use cases to watch attachments, but there's many more. Yeah.
Cool. With that, we are at the end of our agenda, I believe. Unless there's any other business. I do need to do a thing. So if you could, you have already unshared. Great. I will share my screen. And it will be this one, milestones for the Calix working group. So we had adopted draft for participant mapping in ITIP, which was done. We had submit task draft to IESG, which was done. I had submit subscription upgrade, which is done. We have submit JS calendar mapping document, which is not done. When do we think will be? November. What year? This year. All right. Submit VPOL documentation to IESG. I'm going to pump that out to December, I think, realistically. Submit calendar series document. That's already December. We need to add one, which was adopt for JS contact profiles, which will happen next month, hopefully. JS contact profiles. Were there any other milestones? I don't think we're ripe for the other suggested documents. Yes, sorry.
So I was reviewing the calendar subscription draft, and the changes. Michael had made some changes since my last review. I just wanted to check to see whether, I don't think he's online. Is he?
No, he's not online,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Has the working group had a chance to review those changes? Do you guys feel comfortable with the text that he's provided in the latest revision?
Who is the shepherd on this one?
I think, you know, the main change that I would direct the working group's attention to here is there's a section on data URIs, which I think, you know, there's some pretty substantial changes to that section that are in response to my 80 comments. And so I would want to, if you have time, you might want to have the working group have a little chat about that.
All right.
That's it.
Let's glance at these changes. All right, so you can all look at it yourself, or I can pop it up on the screen here for a minute. We've got 10 minutes left. So let me screen share this. So the added text was the value must be a URI, which could be a data URI. The synchronization token itself must be treated as an opaque string by the client, i.e. the actual string data has no specific meaning or syntax. These restrictions align the specification with section 3.2 of RFC 6578, which is basically the same meaning, but it says more about the data itself. And must follow the requirements of, yep, that just names that. That's just, yeah, okay. That looks fine to me. Anyone else? So thumbs up from Ken.
Yeah, as Mike put in the text, this is essentially what WebDev Sync is doing already. And sync tokens and WebDev Sync are typically data URIs. Apple throws them all over the place.
Yeah.
And most other implementations do as well.
Cool. I think I'm happy with it. Everyone who's likely to have an opinion seems happy with it. Mike is the only person I would have checked with, and he wrote it. So I think we're good. Thank you. All right. I'm the shepherd, so I've had extra rights to say I'm happy with it, I guess. Cool. I believe at this point, once I push the button to send that milestone off to my area director for review, we are done. So if you bring up the last slide on the slide thing, it's got a picture of Madrid that I fetched off the internet and didn't check the licensing on. So it's in the data tracker, so whatever. Oh yeah, we have full rights then. That's how copyright works. You say, it was right for me to copy this. With that, everyone, thank you very much. Enjoy your break. See you back in here for, back in here again for email core in a little bit? Fantastic. We love this room. See you soon. Thanks, remote people, particularly those in weird time zones. Thanks for joining us. All time zones are weird. Yeah, yeah. It's to give us some exercise.
Well, we're so raucous, they need to keep us from disturbing the others.
Cool.
I sent the ballot for the other document. The IONA thing is, that's just one.
Yeah.
Like the same.
And
That's going to go in color check soon. This document we just discussed is going to get valid very soon because I just left. The only the last comment I had there a data tracker on it is just making sure that
It is.
they're correct.
I think we have the same
Yeah.
HTTP, but that's about the.
Perfect. Thank you. Easy peasy.
Yeah. In
Cool.
fact, I was gonna-
Yeah, I'll send out the call for adoption shortly.
He's shown up at the,
Have a thing to tick off at the next meeting.
I suspect the profiles documents will be fun to work on.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll float that to them now and see how they feel about that. Because there's some Newton guys, I wasn't sure.
I mean, cannot count it. Most of the stuff I've done.
Maybe it wasn't Sid.
I get around.
All sorts of stuff. And now you're the editor.
Well, actually, I mean, if there's any areas that are most identified.
They are at Jason's.
As a developer. That's the stack.
Yeah.